I found the logbook in a plastic storage tote that hadn't been opened since my parents sold the house. Under that, a second line in smaller writing. A second notification slid in beneath it. Post 3. Acknowledge. My mouth went dry. Those weren't apps on my phone. Those weren't any system I'd ever installed. It looked like the interface of an employee security app, the kind companies use now instead of paper logs. Except I didn't work security, and the logbook in my hands was from 1989. The radio crackled softly. "You found the book," my dad's voice said, and there was something like exhaustion in it. I told them not to leave it where you'd see it. My stomach twisted. "Who are you?" A long pause. The kind of pause where you can hear static breathing. Then, "I'm your father on paper," the voice said quietly. "And I'm your father when they need you to listen." The words hit like ice. Northridge Industrial. Post 3. The garage door seam at the bottom brightened suddenly, a thin line of warm light like sunrise leaking under it. My heart jumped. Then I realized the light wasn't sunlight. It was the dome light of a car, parked right outside my garage door. A car I hadn't heard pull up. No gravel crunch, no engine. Just light bleeding under the door like an eye. The radio hissed. "Don't open the garage," my dad's voice warned. "If you open it, you'll see it. If you see it, it'll know where to file you." File. That word again, like the impound yard story, like systems horror. My stomach rolled. "What is it?" I whispered. The radio voice went softer. "It's the facility," it said. "It's still running." I stared at the logbook, hands shaking. Northridge Industrial is closed. My throat tightened as if my body recognized the object before my mind caught up. I held it in both hands and felt the weight. Too solid for a notebook. Too official to be a diary. The kind of thing you sign at the start of a shift. The kind of thing you keep on a clipboard and guard like it's evidence. "No," the voice said. "It's closed to daylight." A faint thump sounded against the garage door. Not a crash. Not a fist. A polite knock, right at shoulder height. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. R. The same rhythm I'd heard in too many wrong places. My phone screen flickered and displayed a single line of text. "Visitor at gate." The knock came again. I should have put it back in the tote and closed the lid. I should have taken it inside and asked my mom about it on a Sunday afternoon with the sun up. R. Then, through the steel door, a voice spoke. Not loud, not muffled. Close and intimate, like someone standing with their mouth against the metal. My own voice. "Hey," it said softly. "Open up, it's just me." My stomach dropped. I backed away until my spine hit the workbench. The radio hissed urgently. "Do not respond," my dad's voice said. "Do not open. Do not write your name." "I'm not." I started. The garage door lock clunked. Not unlocking. Unlocking. Instead, I stood in the garage under fluorescent light and opened it right there, because curiosity is the oldest bad habit in my family. My heart slammed. The door began to lift on its own, motor whining softly as if someone had hit the button. That thin line of warm light widened into a bright slice, and I saw the bottom edge of a vehicle outside. Black tires, glossy paint. The radio voice went sharp. "Stop it." I lunged for the garage door button on the wall and slammed my palm against it. The door shuddered and stopped mid-lift. Silence hit, thick as felt. Then the voice outside. My voice laughed softly. "You're on shift now," it whispered through the opening. "Write it down." And in my hands, the logbook's last page crept with new ink, as if an invisible pen was moving across the paper. The first page had a printed header, and my dad's handwriting beneath it. 2206. Subject acknowledged gate. The ink on the page looked wet. That detail shouldn't have mattered, but it did. It meant the logbook wasn't just predicting, it was reporting. It was logging my actions in real time, like the garage had become an outpost of whatever Northridge Industrial really was. My mouth went dry. I stared at the new line as if I could will it back into blank paper. 2206. Subject acknowledged gate. Subject not guard, not David, Not even. Subject like a file folder, like evidence, like inventory. The garage door hung open about a foot, enough to let in cold air and a strip of bright light from outside. I could see the bottom of a car parked inches from the door, too close, as if it had rolled up silently and stopped right at the threshold. No engine heat smell. No ticking metal. No exhaust. Just presence. The voice outside, still mine, spoke again, calm and coaxing. Come on, it said. You're making this hard. Date. The 12th of October 1989. The radio on my workbench hissed, my dad's voice low and urgent. Don't answer. Don't look at the headlights. Headlights, my stomach tightened. I hadn't seen any yet, only the glow bleeding under the door. But if it had headlights on, and I lifted the door higher, I'd be staring into them. I swallowed and forced my eyes away from the opening. The garage door control panel on the wall had 3 buttons. Up, down, light. I pressed down. The motor whined, the door shuddered, and didn't move. I pressed again, harder. Nothing. The door stayed suspended, as if the motor had become a suggestion, instead of a mechanism. Outside, my voice chuckled softly. You can't close it yet. The radio hissed. Don't fight the door, my dad's voice warned. Fight the log. Guard, David Harper. My throat tightened. How? A pause. Static breathed. Then my dad's voice said, slower, like he was choosing each word carefully. If you write, you consent, it said. If you sign, you're on shift. You keep it blank, you stay you. My eyes snapped to the logbook in my hands. The last page was still open. The fresh ink line sat there like a hook. I realized something with a sick twist. I hadn't written that entry, but I had acknowledged it. By looking. By holding the book open. By staying on the page while it wrote. The voice outside leaned closer. You see? It murmured. You're already cooperating. The radio hissed sharply. Close the book. Post. 3. My hands shook. I snapped the logbook shut hard enough that the vinyl cover slapped. The moment it closed, the radio static dropped in volume, like the room had gotten more air. Outside, my voice lost a hint of warmth. Open it, it said, less patient now. We need the record. I didn't. The garage air felt colder, the kind of cold that creeps into your teeth. The car outside remained silent, but I could feel it in the same way you feel a person standing too close behind you. My phone vibrated again. I glanced down. A new notification. Radio check required. And beneath it, an icon, like a checkbox, waiting. My throat tightened. They didn't just want me to write. They wanted me to answer a system prompt. A yes-no box. A harmless little compliance action. Shift. 2200 Tumby. 0600. The easiest kind. The voice outside, my voice, spoke gently. Just hit the check, it said. Then we can close the door. The lie was smooth. I could feel how many people had fallen for that exact bargain. Do this small thing, and you'll get safety back. My dad's voice on the radio was quieter now, tired. That's how it gets you, he whispered. Small agreements, little clicks, one signature, then you're theirs. I swallowed hard, and forced my eyes off the phone. The garage door creaked. Not the motor. The panels themselves flexing slightly, as if the door was being lifted from outside. The gap widened, a fraction of an inch. Cold air poured in. I took a step back, heart hammering. It was one of those gray bins with the snapping lid. The kind you buy when you're trying to make your life look organized. It had been shoved behind a stack of moving boxes in my garage for years. Collecting dust and spiderwebs, the label on the side faded to nothing. I was only digging through it because my wife had finally gotten sick of mystery bins. Taking up an entire wall, and because I'd been telling myself for months that cleaning would help me feel normal again. His handwriting was unmistakable. Tight, careful, slightly slanted, like he'd learned to write on forms and never unlearned it. Seeing his name in ink hit me harder than I expected. It felt intimate in a way photos never did. The voice outside sighed. Fine, it said, and the tone shifted, becoming almost disappointed. We'll do it the old way. A new sound came through the gap. A soft scrape on concrete. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, approaching the door. Then a shadow passed across the strip of light. Not the car. Something standing between the headlights and my garage. A shape, tall enough that its legs filled the gap. It paused. Then, from just outside the opening, a hand lowered into view. Not gloved, not human, looking in the way skin looks. Pale, smooth, and the fingers had too many joints. They bent like they were made of soft plastic. The entries were what you'd expect at first. Boring in a comforting way. The hand tapped the bottom edge of my garage door. 3 taps. Paused, too. R. My chest tightened. The hand withdrew. The footsteps retreated, leaving the light strip bright again. Then the voice outside shifted once more. My wife's voice now, warm and annoyed. Evan, she called, like she'd just walked into the garage and caught me doing something stupid. Why is the door stuck? I need to get to work. My breath caught. Marcy should have been inside the house asleep. But my mind still jerked toward the sound of her voice, because it was a reflex trained over years. I turned my head toward the interior door to the house. The handle was still, the deadbolt still locked. No sound from inside. 22 o'clock. Relieved day guard, all secure. The voice outside called again, sharper. Evan, open the door. You're freaking me out. My mouth went dry. The urge to answer her, to reassure her, rose like panic. My dad's voice on the radio cut in, urgent. Don't use her name, he hissed. Don't answer. I clenched my jaw until it hurt. I backed away from the interior door, refusing to let the voice pull my attention through it. Outside, Marcy sighed. Fine, she said, and the voice turned cold. You want to keep your family safe, it asked now, in my voice again. Then do your job. The garage door shuddered. The motor engaged again, whining louder, and the door began lifting on its own. The gap widened. Headlights flooded the garage in harsh white. My eyes stung. I turned my face away instinctively, but the light still burned in my peripheral vision like a camera flash. 22:30. Perimeter check complete. No issues. In that glare, I saw the outline of the car outside. Not a normal car. A vehicle with no make, no clear shape, just a silhouette of metal with a tow, yard sticker on its windshield, and an orange tag hanging where a mirror should be. And taped to the inside of that windshield, facing me, was a printed sheet of paper. A log entry. In my handwriting. Dated. Yesterday. My stomach dropped. I hadn't written it, but the system had decided I had. The radio crackled. My dad's voice strained now, almost breaking. Don't look, he whispered. If you see it, it knows you can be filed. 2310, heard noise near loading bay. Checked. Stray cat. I stumbled backward, grabbed the logbook off the workbench, and held it tight to my chest like a shield. The door kept rising, motor whining, light flooding in. And on the last page of the closed logbook, I felt something through the cover. Pressure like ink bleeding through paper, lines forming under my fingers, like the book was writing, even when it was shut. And I understood the worst part. It didn't need me to pick up a pen. It just needed me to exist near the form. Long enough for my life to become a record. The garage door rose to my waist, then my chest, the motor whining like it was being forced. Headlight glare washed the concrete and made my eyes water. I kept my face turned away, staring at the floor near my boots. Because my dad's warning, don't look at the headlights, felt less like superstition and more like a hard rule in a place where rules were the only shelter. The air outside was colder than it should have been for the season. Not crisp winter cold, something damp and industrial, like the inside of a loading bay. I clutched the logbook against my chest, and backed toward the workbench, feeling for the radio without looking. Then the pages continued, night after night, the same rhythm of checks and notes and small incidents. It was like hearing my dad's footsteps from decades ago, pacing a place I'd never seen. It was strangely calming, until it wasn't. My fingers hit plastic. The handheld radio was warm, as if it had been held recently. Static hissed. Stay inside the light. My dad's voice warned, strained. Do not step into the lane. Lane, like a yard, like an aisle. like a place meant for vehicles, not people. The car outside idled silently, or maybe it wasn't idling at all. Maybe it just existed there. Headlights fixed, paper tag swinging slightly, like it was breathing. A voice from outside, my voice, called softly through the glare. Come on, it's just a walk. I didn't answer. I forced myself to think about the one thing I could still control, proof. If the logbook was real, if the radio was real, then there was a real place named on the cover. Northridge Industrial. Post 3. My dad had worked there. That was real history. I could find records. I could find a map. I could go in daylight and see if the building even existed. If it didn't exist anymore, then whatever was happening was borrowing an address the way it borrowed voices. About 20 pages in, I noticed a tone shift. The handwriting stayed the same, but the notes got shorter. Less narrative. More precise. If it did exist, then maybe closed. Didn't mean what I thought. My phone buzzed against the garage floor where I dropped it earlier. The screen flickered back on, but the display wasn't my home screen anymore. It showed a simple black and white interface like an old security app. A checklist with empty boxes. Radio check. Perimeter. Hall. B. Signature. At the bottom, a blinking cursor sat beside a line labeled name. My stomach tightened. It wanted me to fill it in. It wanted me to become a line item. I didn't touch the phone. 003. Do not note the humming when it stops. Outside, the headlights seemed to brighten a fraction, as if the car was leaning in. The garage door creaked, rising another inch on its own. I reached up blindly, found the manual release cord hanging from the door track, and yanked. Nothing happened the first pull. The second pull released with a loud clunk, and the door shuddered like it had been forced out of a lock. The motor whine stopped. The door stayed suspended, halfway open, as if the system didn't like losing control, but wasn't ready to give it up entirely. My dad's voice hissed through the radio, urgent. Good, keep it there. Don't let it choose the opening. The phrase made my skin crawl. Choose the opening. Like the size of the gap mattered, like it was a mouth deciding how wide to open. I swallowed hard and edged sideways toward the garage side door. The one that led into my backyard. Not the house door, not the driveway. A different exit. The headlight's glare didn't reach that corner as strongly. Shadows pooled there, thick and inviting. 017. If radio repeats you, do not answer. My dad's voice crackled. Not there. I froze. What? Shadow is still a lane, he said quickly. Stay where you are. The voice outside chuckled softly. He's right, it said. You don't get cute. My throat tightened. Both voices agreeing made my skin crawl worse than if they'd argued. I backed into the center of the garage between glare and shadow, and tried to steady my breathing. The only way out was daylight. Proof records. The facility. I raised my voice just enough to be heard, without speaking any names. What is Northridge Industrial? The radio went quiet for a beat. Then my dad's voice came back, softer, tired. It's a place that never finished closing, he said. They shut the gates. They turned off the lights. But they didn't end the shift. 029. Lights brightened in Hall B. Stayed seated. Correct. Outside, my voice whispered. Pleased. Good question. The car's headlights flickered once, and for a heartbeat the glare shifted just enough that I saw the orange tow tag hanging where a mirror should be. The tag number was T88,214 anymore. It was a string of digits I recognized too well. My birth date. My stomach dropped. My dad's voice on the radio went sharp. Don't look. I squeezed my eyes shut and turned my head away, heart slamming. Then, from inside the logbook pressed against my chest, I felt the faint scratch of a pen. Not audible in the room. Felt through the cover. Normal was a joke, after you lose a parent. I frowned and flipped back, thinking I'd missed context. Those lines weren't attached to any normal security event. They read like rules, like someone had turned a job into a survival routine and was documenting it for the next guard. Like the book was writing the moment into existence. I didn't wait for the next trick. I backed up, keeping my face down, and grabbed the tarp off the shelf. Old canvas, heavy and stiff. I threw it over the garage door opening like a curtain, blocking the headlights and turning the glare into a muted glow. The voice outside changed instantly, anger flaring. "Hey." The tarp fluttered, as if something pressed against it from outside. Testing. I didn't give it time. I ran through the interior door into the house, and slammed it shut behind me. The deadbolt was still locked, but the door opened anyway, like the lock had become decoration. I didn't stop to think about that. I bolted up the stairs, grabbed my jacket and keys, and ran back down. My wife's bedroom door was shut. I didn't knock. I didn't say her name. I couldn't risk making her a handle. I swallowed hard and kept flipping. I yanked the front door open and ran out into the cold night, leaving the house behind. In the driveway, my car sat where it always sat, but its headlights were on, bright, pointed at my front porch, like it had been parked to watch. I didn't get in. I turned and ran down the street to the neighbor's porch light, to witnesses, to anywhere that wasn't my garage. Behind me, the tarp in my garage tore with a loud rip like fabric, giving under a steady pull. I didn't look back. The next morning, in full daylight, I drove to the address on the logbook cover. The logbook ended where it should have ended, late 1989, a few months worth of shifts, then blank pages. The last dated entry in my dad's hand was in November. Northridge Industrial. Every map app said it was closed. City records said condemned. Yet when I turned onto the access road, the chain link fence was intact, and a sign at the gate looked freshly painted. No trespassing. Active site. And beside the keypad, taped neatly like a work order, was a printed notice. Post 3, relief required. Report to desk. Dated yesterday. The thing about closed places is they're never as closed as people want them to be. If a building truly dies, it becomes rubble. It becomes weeds and graffiti, and kids daring each other to hop fences. Northridge wasn't rubble. Northridge was maintained just enough to feel like someone still cared. The fence line wasn't sagging. The keypad wasn't rusted. The gravel in front of the gate had fresh tire tracks pressed into it. And then, at the back, after all the blank pages, there was writing again. And the sign wasn't faded. Active site. My stomach tightened as I sat in my car at the shoulder and stared at the gate. In daylight, everything should have looked less scary. Instead, it looked worse, because daylight made the details sharp. A camera dome set above the keypad, pointed straight at the road. The lens glinted in the sun like an eye. The printed notice, taped to the gate, was perfectly aligned. Corners crisp. Post 3, relief required. Report to desk. The dateline was what made my hands go numb. Yesterday. The same impossible yesterday as the last logbook entry. The same yesterday as if time was being recorded somewhere else, and then pasted onto mine. I didn't get out. I didn't touch the keypad. I didn't step onto the gravel apron that led to the gate like a tongue. Fresh writing. I took photos from inside my car. Every picture came out slightly blurred, like my camera couldn't find focus on the paper. It kept sharpening the fence behind it, the weeds below it, the glare on the keypad, everything except the words. That shouldn't have been possible. It felt like the notice was refusing to be captured, the same way the yard refused to be photographed when it got active. I drove away because standing there too long made my skin prickle, like the camera above the gate was learning the shape of my face. Back home, I laid the logbook on my kitchen table and turned the pages carefully, as if flipping too fast would invite something to write again. In daylight, the book looked older. The 1989 entries were faded in places. Paper edges were worn, but the last page, the yesterday page, still looked fresh, as if it had been added last night. I didn't read it out loud. I didn't even mouth it. I just watched it. Then I noticed something I hadn't seen in the garage, a folded page tucked into the back cover, wedged behind the cardboard lining like a hidden note. I slid it out. My breath caught, as if the air had been punched out of my lungs. It was a procedures sheet, typed, not handwritten. with a header that looked like it had been photocopied too many times. Northridge Industrial Security Post 3 Night Procedures. My throat tightened. Below the header was a list, not dramatic, not supernatural, the kind of bullet points you'd see in any facility binder. Except these didn't read like normal procedures. They read like survival rules dressed as policy. Do not sign your name after 0 o'clock. Initial only. Do not write the time you hear the humming stop. Mark Anna. Do not respond if the radio repeats your last sentence. If Hull B lights brighten on their own, remain seated. The last page wasn't yellowed like the others. It looked cleaner, less worn, like it hadn't been pressed and turned and handled. The ink wasn't faded. It was dark and sharp, like it had been written recently. If you smell ozone, close the logbook immediately. If a vehicle arrives without a driver, do not approach. Log delivery. If you see your own handwriting on a blank page, do not correct it. If you hear knocking in a pattern, do not count it out loud. Do not use anyone's full name on site. Relief arrives only when the log is complete. That last line made my stomach drop. Relief arrives only when the log is complete. That wasn't a rule. That was a trap disguised as a condition. A way to keep a person working forever by making leaving dependent on finishing. I flipped the sheet over. At the top of that page, in the same neat format as every shift entry, it read. There were handwritten notes in the margins. Tight, careful. My dad's handwriting in some places, another handwriting in others. The dad parts were familiar, slanted, controlled. The other handwriting was different, blocky, heavier, almost carved into the paper, as if the pen had been pressed too hard. In my dad's hand beside, do not sign your name after 0 o'clock. ED written. It counts signatures, like doors. In the other hand, beside if Hull B lights brighten, someone had written. Don't look back at the glass. My throat tightened. That didn't sound like my dad. That sounded like someone else who'd been trapped long enough to leave warnings like scratches on a freezer door. I flipped to another margin note in my dad's handwriting. Smaller. Date. Yesterday. Tried to leave once. Wrong hall. Lost 6 hours. My stomach rolled. Lost hours. Time jumps. The same thing the dashcam story did. The same wrongness. Then I noticed something that made the hair rise on my arms. At the bottom of the procedure sheet, in the heavier handwriting, was a date. Not 1989. Yesterday. And beneath it, a line that wasn't a note. It was a question. Who opened the garage? My mouth went dry. It wasn't written to me. It was written about me. Like my house had been added to the facility's documentation. Like my garage door was now an incident on their shift. Not a date. A word. I stared at the paper, until my eyes burned. Then, the sound came. A faint radio hiss. Not from my phone, not from a speaker, from inside the logbook. I froze, and leaned closer. The closed book, closed, silent, made a soft crackling sound, like tiny static trapped between pages. The hairs on my arms lifted. I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to look at the yesterday page again. But the sound grew louder, and a voice began to form through the crackle, muffled like it was coming from inside a pocket. Post 3. My dad died last winter. Hard, sudden, clean. The kind of death everyone calls peaceful, because they don't know what else to say. He'd been retired for a long time, but he never stopped moving like a man waiting for a radio call. Even at family dinners, he sat with his back to a wall, eyes flicking to doors, hands always doing something. Folding napkins, stacking plates, checking his phone for no reason. Under it, my throat tightened. I backed away. The static stopped. Silence snapped into place. Then, from my hallway, the smoke detector beeped once. Not the low battery chirp. A single, clean beep like a test. The lights in my hallway brightened slightly, then steadied, even though I hadn't touched a switch. Hall B lights brighten on their own. Remained seated. I stared at the procedure sheet in my hands. The rules weren't meant for Northridge only. They were for anywhere. The shift tried to extend into. Shift. 2200 find. Oh, 600. and I realized my mistake wasn't finding the logbook. My mistake was bringing it into my house and letting it become a second post. One more place the facility could keep running. One more place it could record me. My phone buzzed. Signal returned. Full bars. A single text message from an unknown number. Report to desk. And beneath it, a photo attachment that loaded painfully slow. When it finally appeared, my stomach dropped. It was a picture of my garage, taken from inside my garage, showing me standing under the half-open door holding the logbook. My face wasn't visible. And then, one line that made my skin go cold, but my posture was. And someone had circled my hands in red, as if highlighting evidence. Underneath the photo, a caption in clean typed letters. Subject, acknowledged gate. Then the hallway light flickered once more, and from somewhere behind my kitchen walls, I heard the softest sound of a pen scratching on paper. I didn't go to Northridge that night, because I wanted answers. I went because the rules were starting to work on my house, and if I stayed, I was going to become a post without ever leaving my kitchen. I waited until full dark and drove out with the logbook on the passenger seat inside a zip gym bag, like it was a weapon I didn't trust. I didn't tell my wife where I was going. I didn't say her name out loud once I left the driveway. I kept my phone on silent and turned the screen face down on the console. Every mile toward Northridge felt like the road was narrowing, like the darkness was compressing the world into a corridor, the way the impound yard had done. My headlights carved a tunnel through bare trees and industrial backroads. And the whole time I kept thinking about one line on that procedure sheet. Relief arrives only when the log is complete. 2204, heard your garage door open. You shouldn't be reading this. What if complete wasn't something you reached by writing? What if it was something the facility decided when it had enough of you? Enough names, enough habits, enough proof that you'd respond. The access road ended where it had in daylight: chain, link fence, keypad, camera dome. But at night, the place looked awake. Not lit up like a working factory. No floodlights, no big sodium glare. Just small pockets of light behind windows deeper inside, like desk lamps in offices where people were still working late. The gate should have been chained. It wasn't. It stood slightly ajar, open by maybe 6 inches, as if someone had pulled it and stopped halfway. The keypad screen glowed faintly with no input, like it was waiting for a touch. My mouth went dry. I parked on the shoulder with my headlights off and sat there breathing for a full minute, listening for anything. Engine noise, voices, the distant hum of machinery. There was only one sound, and it made my skin prickle. A low humming, steady and continuous, like a fluorescent ballast singing somewhere behind the fence. Not loud, but present enough that my teeth wanted to vibrate. My hands went numb. The garage suddenly felt too quiet. The refrigerator hum from inside the house sounded far away, muffled, like the walls had thickened. My dad's rule: do not write the time you hear the humming stop, hit me like ice. So it mattered whether the humming stopped. That meant it stopped sometimes. That meant when it stopped, something changed. I grabbed the gym bag and got out. The air smelled like wet asphalt and metal. No insects. No night sounds. The kind of dead quiet you get near buildings that have been empty too long. I approached the gate slowly and pushed it open just enough to slip through. The chain link scraped softly on its track, like a reluctant sigh. Inside the fence, the gravel lot stretched toward a dark building with multiple wings. Northridge Industrial looked like a place that had been built in the 70s, expanded in the 80s, then patched together with whatever money was available. Long, low structures, loading bays, roll-up doors, faded signage that read Northridge in peeling letters. The sign that should have been on the fence, condemned, was gone. In its place was a newer sign. I stared at the sentence until my eyes burned. Active site. Authorized personnel only. I didn't know why that made me angrier than scared, but it did. Like the building was lying with confidence. I kept moving. The main entrance was a double metal door with a glass panel that reflected my flashlight beam. I didn't shine the light directly at it for long. Don't look back at the glass, the margin note warned. I didn't understand why yet, but I didn't want to learn by accident. The door wasn't locked. It opened with a soft click. Warm air breathed out of the building, stale and dry, carrying the faint smell of paper and old carpet and ozone. Like the inside of a copier room, the humming was louder now, vibrating faintly in my jaw. I stepped inside. The lobby was preserved like time had paused. A faded poster on the wall showed safety procedures with Kleipart hard hats. A bulletin board had yellowed memos pinned to it, the dates in 1989. A plastic plant sat in the corner coated in dust. The fluorescent lights overhead were on, but dim, as if they were running on half power. I swallowed hard and walked forward. Heard your garage door. Open. There was a security desk right where you'd expect it, with a chair behind it and a phone and a radio charger dock. And on the desk, open to the last page, was a logbook. The same black vinyl cover, the same masking tape label. My stomach dropped. I glanced down at the gym bag in my hand. It was still zipped. I could feel my logbook inside its solid weight. The one on the desk shouldn't exist, unless the logbook had never left. Unless what I'd taken home was not the original, but a copy and extension. Created to pull me back. A pen lay beside the open book, capped, placed neatly like someone had just set it down. Next to it was a badge on a lanyard. My garage door had opened 10 minutes ago when I hit the button on my visor. That's how I got the bin out. No one else had been here. My wife was inside. The neighbors were at work. There was no way a logbook from 1989 could know that. Post 3. My throat tightened. The desk chair creaked softly behind me, not because I touched it, because it moved. I froze, breath caught. Then, from the hallway beyond the lobby, a voice called softly. Relief for Post 3. My dad's voice. Not through a radio this time. Not muffled by static. In the building with real air. My skin went cold. I did not answer. I flipped back through the pages fast, searching for the last entry date again, convincing myself I'd misread. The humming in the walls dipped for a half-second, like a breath held. Then it resumed, steadier. A new sound started, faint at first. Footsteps in the hall. Slow, measured. Coming toward the lobby, I stared at the desk, at the open logbook, at the blank line where a signature should go, and understood the trap clearly now. If I picked up the pen, I'd become the guard. If I wrote anything, even a refusal, I'd be participating. The building didn't care what I wrote. It cared that I wrote. The footsteps stopped at the edge of the lobby. Darkness. A silhouette stood there, just beyond the pool of dim fluorescent light. Tall. Still, shoulders squared. 1989. 1989. I couldn't see a face. Only the outline of a uniform that looked like my dad's old security jacket. The silhouette stepped forward. The light caught its chest patch. Northridge. Security. The silhouette's head tilted slightly, and my dad's voice came from it, calm and familiar. Don't be stubborn, kid, it said. Just sign in. The pen on the desk rolled half an inch toward the logbook, by itself. The open page's fresh ink line shimmered slightly, as if it had been written seconds ago. And right in front of my eyes, the logbook began to write a new entry without a hand touching it. 2211. Relief arrived. Subject present. He'd been a security guard before he was dad. Before I existed, before my mom's voice softened him. He worked nights in the late 80s and early 90s, when security meant two-way radios and handwritten logs and a flashlight that felt heavier the later it got. I grew up hearing stories that never had endings, this one time on post. And then he'd drift off, staring into the distance, like he'd remembered something he didn't want to share. Then, the yesterday page again, sitting at the back like a trap. I backed away, hard hammering, and the security desk phone rang once. Sharp, clean, too loud in the quiet lobby. The ringing stopped immediately. Then the PA speaker in the ceiling crackled, and a calm voice. Too calm spoke like an automated announcement. Shift continues, until log is complete. The silhouette in the hallway smiled with a mouth I still couldn't see, and the humming in the walls stopped. When the humming stopped, the building changed temperature. Not by a few degrees. It dropped like someone opened a freezer door and left it open. The air turned heavy, damp, and metallic, and the hairs on my arms lifted under my jacket. The lobby lights brightened a fraction at the same time, as if the building wanted me to see clearly now that the hum, whatever it was, had gone quiet. The fluorescent tubes overhead stopped buzzing. The silence became too clean. The logbook on the desk kept writing. I swallowed hard and turned my head toward my garage door. 2212. Humming stopped. Subject aware. My stomach dropped. The procedure sheet had been explicit. Do not write the time you hear the humming stop. And the logbook had just done it anyway. In a way that made it worse. It recorded awareness, not sound. The silhouette in the hallway took another step closer into the lobby light. Now I could see more. A security jacket, dark navy. A brass nameplate on the chest that caught the light. The nameplate looked like it had been polished recently. I forced my eyes to stay off it. Names are handles, my dad had warned. Full names especially. Signatures. Labels. Anything that makes you known in a system that wants to file you. The silhouette's voice stayed my dad's. Tired professional. Familiar. It's cold when the hum stops, it said, like it was explaining a routine. You'll get used to it. I swallowed hard and backed away from the desk. The pen rolled again, just a little, tapping the book like a metronome. It was closed. 3 taps. Pause. 2. R. I felt my stomach clench. That rhythm again, showing up like a signature, like the building's way of confirming that it was the same system every time. The silhouette waited. It didn't lunge. It didn't threaten. It stood like a supervisor waiting for a trainee to do the obvious thing. Sign in, it said calmly. I didn't answer. My gaze flicked to the exit door behind me, the one I'd come in through. It was still closed, still visible. The handle looked normal. I took 1 step toward it. The lobby phone rang again. 1 sharp ring. The exit door lock clicked. But the little red sensor light above it blinked once. Then stayed steady. Not from the knob. From inside the frame. Deadbolt sliding. I froze. The silhouette's voice softened. You can't leave until you finish your shift, it said. My throat tightened. I'm not working here. The silhouette chuckled quietly. You, re at post 3. The logbook wrote again. Ink flowing smooth and fresh. 2213. Subject attempted exit. Corrected. Corrected. I stared at the new line and felt the worst realization settle into my gut. The building didn't need to touch me to correct me. It just needed to document my attempt, to record it, to reduce me to behavior. And from somewhere in the garage, behind the stacked boxes, behind the shelves, I heard a faint hiss of static, like a 2-way radio waking up. I forced myself to move away from the desk, away from the exit, toward the hallway that led deeper into the facility. Not because I wanted to, but because staying in the lobby felt like standing in a spotlight. The longer I stayed here, the more it wrote. The more it wrote, the more real I became to it. The silhouette stepped aside with an almost polite gesture, opening the hallway like a velvet rope at a theater. Perimeter, it said, my dad's voice patient. Then Hall B. Hall B. The procedure sheet had warned, if Hall B lights brighten on their own, remain seated. I had no desire to find out what brighten meant here. I moved into the hallway. The air smelled like paper and old carpet, and something faintly chemical. The walls were painted the same bland beige as every industrial office built in the 80s. Posters lined the corridor, safety slogans, diagrams, memos dated 1989. The kind of place time should have wrecked. But the carpet wasn't rotted. The posters weren't moldy. The building wasn't decayed. It was maintained. Then a voice crackled through the silence, low and familiar in a way that made my stomach twist, like it had never stopped being used. Behind me, the lobby lights dimmed slightly, and I felt the sensation of being released from a gaze. Ahead, the corridor lights were steady. Not bright, not dim, just enough to walk by. I kept my breathing quiet, and my mouth shut. The first door on the right had a small window with wired glass. I avoided looking into it directly. Don't look back at the glass, the margin note had said. Still, in my peripheral vision, I saw movement, a shadow shifting behind the glass, like someone pacing a small room. I kept walking. At the end of the hall, the corridor split. Left, loading bays. Right, interior offices. A sign hung overhead, old plastic with black letters. My dad's voice. Hall B. The arrow pointed right. My throat tightened. The silhouette behind me, my dad, said softly, "You know the route." I didn't. But my feet hesitated anyway, as if my body remembered something my mind didn't. The humming in the walls started again, faint and steady. The temperature rose slightly with it, as if the hum was the building's heartbeat returning. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Against my will, I checked. The same checklist interface was on the screen, but now one box had filled itself. Post 3, it said quietly. Do you copy? Radio. Check FIDI. I hadn't done a radio check. I hadn't pressed a button. The system marked it complete anyway, like it didn't need my consent for the small steps. It only needed my consent for the big one, the signature. Another item blinked. Perimeter. Required. A line of text appeared beneath it. Proceed to Hall B. The silhouette's voice leaned close, almost whispering in my ear like a supervisor, who didn't want the cameras to catch it. If you do your rounds, it calms down, it said. My skin prickled. The voice chuckled. You'll meet it in Hall B. I didn't answer. I swallowed hard and moved toward the right corridor, following the sign. The lights above me brightened slightly as I approached the Hall B door, just a fraction, like a dimmer being nudged up. The hum in the walls grew louder. The procedure sheet flashed in my mind. If Hall B lights brighten on their own, remain seated. Remain seated where? There was no chair in this hallway. The Hall B door was propped open. Warm light spilled out, brighter than any other part of the building, as if someone had set up a stage inside. I stopped at the threshold and kept my feet planted. The silhouette behind me went still. The logbook back in the lobby, impossibly distant but still present, began scratching softly, pen on paper, as if it could write through walls. Inside Hall B, something moved. My throat had gone dry so fast, it felt glued shut. And even if it hadn't, I wasn't sure my voice would come out as anything but a squeak. I stood there holding the logbook, like it was suddenly heavy enough to pin me to the concrete. Not a person walking. A slow shift in the light itself, like a spotlight turning. Then, a voice spoke from within, calm and almost friendly. Post 3, it said. Step inside and sign your name. The lights in the hallway brightened again, just a little more. My knees went weak. I could feel the building trying to make the invitation feel obvious. Routine, inevitable. I clenched my jaw and did the one thing the rules had taught me. I sat down. Right there on the hallway floor, back against the wall. Eyes down, refusing to cross the threshold. The hallway light steadied. After the funeral, my mom gave me a small box of his keepsakes, his old badge clip, a cracked pocket watch, a photo of him in uniform with a mustache that made him look like a stranger. No logbooks, no journals, nothing like that. Dad wasn't the write things down type at home. The static hissed again, from somewhere behind the boxes. The humming softened. For a moment, the building paused, as if reconsidering. Then the voice in Hall B laughed quietly. Good, it said. You're learning. And somewhere behind me, in the lobby, the logbook wrote another line, fresh ink carving my actions into permanence. 2217. Subject complied with seating protocol. Candidate confirmed. Candidate. That word sat in my skull, like a stone. Not guard. Not employee. Candidate. Like I was being evaluated for a role. Like the building was deciding whether I could replace someone who had been doing this too long. I kept my eyes down and my back against the wall, breathing shallow, so I didn't make sound that could be used as proof of panic. The hallway light stayed steady now that I was seated. The humming in the walls softened to a background vibration. Post 3, my dad's voice repeated, a little sharper now. Radio check. The voice inside Hall B didn't sound angry. It sounded satisfied. See, it said, you follow procedure and you stay safe. Safe. The word made my stomach twist. because it felt like the kind of promise that only exists inside a cage. I didn't respond. I didn't move. Minutes passed. My legs started to cramp. The cold from earlier had faded with the hum returning, but the air still tasted like metal and copier toner. My phone buzzed again. Perimeter. Soin. I hadn't walked a perimeter. The system checked the box anyway. My hands trembled. I turned my head slowly, scanning the garage. Another line appeared. Signature. Required. The blinking cursor returned beside name. My throat tightened. That was the core of it. Everything else was misdirection and conditioning. It could mark steps complete. It could simulate compliance. It could shepherd me into the right corridor. But it couldn't sign for me, at least not cleanly. It needed my name, written by my hand. It needed consent and ink. Because once you sign, you aren't just present. You're assigned. And assignment is how a system holds you. I didn't see a radio. I didn't see a speaker. Just shelves, a lawnmower, stacked bins. My kid's bike with a flat tire. Ordinary things, the kind of clutter you stop noticing. My dad's voice, real or borrowed. I couldn't tell anymore. Came quietly from behind me in the hallway, closer than it had been. I tried to outsmart it, he said softly. I thought I could do the job without giving it what it wanted. My chest tightened. I didn't turn my head. His voice continued, tired. I didn't sign after midnight, I initialed. I stopped writing times. I stayed seated when hall brightened. I followed the little rules. A pause. Then, very softly, but I still had to write something. I still had to log enough to prove I was here. My mouth went dry. You're not my dad, I whispered, and hated myself for speaking at all. The voice didn't react like it had been insulted. It reacted like it had been expected. No, it said gently. I'm the part of him that stayed on shift. Then, I saw something else. The line hit me like ice. Stayed on shift. The last entry, written yesterday. My father wasn't being haunted. He was still working. Or something was still working through him. The voice in Hall B spoke again, calm and administrative. Candidate, it said. Relief request acknowledged. My phone screen flickered. A new message appeared beneath signature. On top of a workbench in the corner, half hidden under a rag, sat a black handheld radio with a long antenna. Relief available. My throat tightened. Relief available only when the log is complete. That rule was the trap. It offered you the reward for doing the one thing it needed. A footstep sounded inside hole B. Slow, measured. Not approaching like a person, but like a system moving a piece. I kept my eyes down. The footstep stopped at the threshold, just beyond my peripheral. A shadow fell across the hallway floor. Not a full silhouette. Just the outline of shoes and the lower edge of a uniform coat. The voice above me wasn't my dad now. It was flat, genderless, almost bored. I hadn't owned one, not ever. The last time I touched the radio like that was when my dad let me play with his dead one as a kid and told me not to press the button. You understand now, it said. The logbook is not a record, it is a binding. My throat tightened. Binding what? A pause. Then, the shift. My skin prickled. The shadow at the threshold didn't move closer. It didn't need to. The pressure of its presence filled the space like humidity. You found the book, it said. That made you adjacent. You brought it home. That made you connected. My stomach rolled, remembering the garage, the radio that appeared, the door unlocking itself, the car with headlights. And now you are here, it said calmly. That makes you eligible. Eligible, candidate, assigned. All the words of systems and paperwork. The voice continued. This facility remains closed to public hours. It remains open to duty hours. Someone must remain on duty to keep the closed state stable. This one's indicator. Light blinked green. I swallowed hard. Stable from what? A faint hum rose in the walls, then dipped again like the building inhaling. The voice lowered, from the outside becoming inside. My skin went cold. I thought of the garage door seam turning black. The car's light bleeding under the door. My locks becoming decoration. my home shifting into the facility's rules. The logbook wasn't just keeping me in Northridge. It was keeping Northridge out of my house. A containment rule, the way an impound yard kept evidence contained. The way the cornfield rule kept the field from learning you. The way the garbage compactor kept bags under pressure. Systems horror, my brain whispered uselessly. A job that is actually a boundary. The shadow at the threshold shifted slightly. Shoes angled toward me. Write your name, the voice said, gentle and final. Accept assignment, the disturbance ends. Static breathed from its speaker. My throat tightened, and if I don't, silence held for a beat. Then the voice answered softly, almost kind. Then the disturbance spreads. My phone screen flickered again. A list of locations appeared, like a routing sheet. Garage. Open. Hallway. Locked. Bedroom. Occupied. Kitchen. Lights on. I stared at it, waiting for my brain to supply a rational explanation. A neighbor's radio bleeding through. A prank. A prop left behind by the previous homeowner. But the radio wasn't dusty. It looked used. The metal clip had fresh scratches. The antenna wasn't bent. My stomach dropped. My wife. The word occupied, near bedroom, made bile rise in my throat. I forced myself not to say her name. Forced myself not to speak into the air like a plea. The voice at the threshold leaned closer, almost whispering. You want her safe? It asked. You want your home normal? I clenched my teeth. Sign, it said. The fluorescent lights above me brightened slightly, as if encouraging. The humming dipped again, and with it the temperature fell, the air turning damp and cold. The building punishing hesitation with discomfort, which is why the book in that tote made my stomach drop. The voice came again, calmer, like my dad was trying to lower someone's panic. The radio hissed faintly from my pocket. No radio in my pocket. But I heard it anyway, like static in my blood. My dad's voice, strained now, came through that imagined hiss. Don't, it whispered. Don't do it. I swallowed hard. Why? His voice cracked, exhausted. Because once you sign, he said, you don't get relieved. You get replaced. I felt my stomach turn. Replaced by who? A pause. Then, softly, by you. The shadow at the threshold spoke again, calm and patient. Candidate, it said. Last instruction. It's okay, he said. Don't talk in the open. My phone screen displayed a single line. Bold and blinking like a warning. Sign, or lose home. My hands shook. I stared at the concrete floor and tried to find a loophole the way my dad must have tried to find loopholes. Don't sign after midnight. Initial only. Maybe I could initial. Maybe I could write a false name. Maybe I could write nothing and spill ink. Maybe I could destroy the logbook. Then I realized the most important rule on that procedure sheet. If you see your own handwriting on a blank page, do not correct it, because the facility could already write as me. It didn't need my handwriting. It needed my intention. My stomach turned. Don't talk in the open. That sounded like the kind of instruction you give someone when there's something listening. My consent. I took a slow breath. Then, I stood up. The hallway lights brightened again. Testing. I kept my eyes down and took one step backward. Away from Holby's threshold. Away from the shadow. The voice above me went sharper. Stop. I didn't. I walked the other way, toward the lobby, toward the desk, toward the logbook that kept writing. The shadow didn't chase. It didn't need to. It just spoke, calm as ever. Return to desk, it said. Complete signature. My eyes flicked involuntarily to the big closed garage door. To the thin seam at the bottom where a sliver of daylight should have shone, except it didn't. The seam was black. I kept walking anyway, because there was one thing the system couldn't tolerate. An unlogged exit. If writing was consent, then leaving without being recorded was refusal. And if refusal caused the disturbance to spread, then I had to decide whether saving my wife meant sacrificing myself, or whether the only way to save her was to break the entire system at the source. The lobby lights came into view ahead. The security desk waited, and the logbook lay open, pen poised, ready to turn my life into an entry. I reached the desk, and grabbed the pen. The pen was warm, like someone else had been holding it just before I did. My fingers tightened around it, and I felt the whole building react. Lights brightening a fraction, humming steadying, the air shifting like a lung taking a deeper breath. It wanted the pen in a hand, any hand. My hand was the cleanest kind of consent. The logbook's last entry line flashed in my mind. Heard your garage door open. I didn't bring the pen to the page. I snapped it in half. Plastic cracked with a sharp pop. Ink sprayed a dark line across the open logbook like blood, and for the first time since I walked into Northridge, the building made a sound that wasn't hum or static, a low vibrating groan through the walls, like steel flexing under pressure. The shadow in Hall B moved, fast, decisive, toward the lobby. The hallway light surged bright, then dimmed, like the system couldn't decide whether to punish me or preserve itself. My phone buzzed violently in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw the checklist interface glitching, boxes filling and emptying on their own. Signature. Required. A new warning flashed. Unauthorized damage. Incident report. The logbook's pages fluttered slightly, though there was no wind. The fresh ink line I'd splattered began to creep, as if the paper was drinking it and reforming it into letters. How would he hear it? Unless the he on the radio wasn't my dad at all. Unless it was something using his cadence like a uniform. My stomach dropped. Even broken ink became language here. I grabbed the logbook with both hands and slammed it shut, hard enough that the cover slapped like a door. I pressed it to my chest and ran. Not toward Hall B. Not deeper into the building. Toward the exit. The lobby door handle was cold in my palm. I yanked. Locked. Of course. The building wasn't going to let me leave unfiled now. I'd become an incident. Incidents had to be documented. The shadow reached the lobby threshold. The air turned colder, damp again, humming dipping into silence like a held breath. I clenched my jaw and forced my feet to move. A voice spoke from the shadow, no longer my dad's, no longer any borrowed warmth. Flat administrative. Subject has damaged company property, it said. Corrective action required. My phone screen flashed another line. Relief cancelled. Then, another. Home status. Unstable. My stomach clenched, Marcy. The word sat behind my teeth like a scream I couldn't afford to make. I wouldn't give it her name. I backed away from the locked door and scanned the lobby. A fire extinguisher case on the wall. A broken vending machine. A metal filing cabinet. Old industrial posters. Nothing helpful. Then I saw the security desk phone again. Corded, dusty, dead, looking. And beside it a metal badge clip, stamped Post 3. The badge was there to make you feel official. To make you feel like you belonged. Belonging was another kind of consent. Not toward the radio. Toward the door into the house. I didn't touch it. Instead, I grabbed the gym bag I'd brought, ripped it open, and shoved the logbook inside. I pulled the zipper tight, as if fabric could hold paperwork the way a fence holds a yard. The shadow stepped closer. The lights above flickered and brightened, like Hall B was bleeding into the lobby, now. The hum stopped completely. The cold deepened. A voice came through the ceiling pa, calm and final. Shift continues, until log is complete. Then, from somewhere deeper inside the building, I heard the soft scrape of a chair against tile. A sound that shouldn't be here, in an empty facility. A seated presence. Waiting for a signature. I made it 3 steps before the garage door motor clicked. The shadow moved again, and for the first time I felt actual panic claw up my throat. Not fear of being hurt, fear of being assigned, filed, stored. I did the only destructive thing left. I slammed the gym bag against the corner of the filing cabinet until something inside cracked. Plastic, SD card. No. Pages tearing, the logbook spine breaking. The building groaned again, louder now. Lights flared, the air tasted like ozone. My phone vibrated with a new message. Incident escalation. Containment failing. The shadow paused, as if it didn't like that phrase any more than I did. Containment failing. So that was the truth. The logbook wasn't just binding me, not opening, just engaging like a lock. It was binding whatever Northridge was keeping from spilling into normal hours, normal houses, normal lives. My dad had spent years on a shift that never ended because he believed the alternative was worse. And now, I was breaking the binder. The shadow leaned toward me. A different voice came out of it. My dad again, strained, urgent. Realer than anything else had sounded tonight. "Stop," it whispered. "Please, you'll open it." My breath hitched. The plea was the cruelest trick yet. But the logbook in the bag pressed against my ribs felt alive. Heavy, like a heart beating wrong. I swallowed hard, and forced myself to do something that felt like jumping off a cliff. I ran to the fire exit. It was tucked under a folded tarp and a bundle of bungee cords, wrapped in a brown paper grocery bag, like someone had been trying to hide it from casual eyes. The cover was black vinyl, scuffed at the corners. A strip of masking tape ran across the front, with block letters written in thick marker. Then the interior door handle. My door to my own house turned slightly, testing. Not the main lobby door. The red metal door with the push bar and the alarm sign. Emergency, exit only. I hit the push bar. The alarm didn't sound. The door opened. Outside was not the gravel lot and the fence line. Outside was a hallway. Another hallway, identical paint, identical lights, identical stale air, stretching into the distance like a loop. The facility didn't let you leave. It only let you change corridors. My breath caught. The handle returned to neutral. A second later, I heard the deadbolt slide. I stumbled back, heart hammering. The shadow behind me chuckled, softly, amused now. "You can't exit without logging," it said. My phone screen displayed the blinking cursor again. Name. The building wasn't asking for my name as a label. It was asking for my name as a key. I backed away from the emergency door and hit the wall, cornered between the desk and the looped hallway. The shadow stepped closer. And in that moment, I understood the only real loophole left. Locked. If writing was consent, then the only safe signature was one that didn't belong to me anymore. I opened the gym bag, pulled out the broken logbook, and flipped it open to the yesterday page, without letting my eyes linger on the lines. I grabbed the broken pen halves, pressed the ink, stained tip to the paper, and wrote one word. Void. Not my name, not initials. Not a lie. Name. Void. The ink bled. The page absorbed it greedily. The building's lights flickered violently. The humming surged back on in a roar, then dropped to a steady, deep vibration. The air warmed slightly, like a system stabilizing after a shock. The shadow froze. From the other side, my phone screen blinked. Signature, complete. Then, relief, approved. For one heartbeat, the facility went quiet, as if it had accepted the word the way it accepted signatures. Then the main lobby door behind me clicked, unlocked. Warm night. Air slid in through the seam. The shadow's voice, flat and administrative again, said softly, "Departure logged." My stomach dropped. I didn't wait. I shoved the logbook back into the bag, sprinted out the lobby door, and ran to my car without looking at any windows. I drove home in shaking silence. When I reached my street, every house was dark, normal dark. My driveway was empty, no car in my garage. The door was shut, no strange light under the seam. I unlocked my front door with trembling hands and stepped inside. Marcy was asleep on the couch with a blanket over her. TV paused on a menu screen. She stirred and mumbled something that sounded like my name, normal and sleepy. I didn't answer her. I didn't correct her. I just stood there shaking, breathing in the smell of our home, like it was a miracle. In the morning, I checked the gym bag. "Hey," I shouted before I could stop myself. "Marcy?" The logbook's cover was blank. The 1989 label gone. The facility name gone. The pages inside were empty, clean white paper like a brand. New notebook, except for one line on the last page, written in fresh dark ink. Date, yesterday, 22:04, subject, returned home. Shift continues. No answer, no footsteps, no what. From the kitchen, the lock had just moved on its own. The radio hissed, and my dad's voice came through, low and urgent. "Don't shout names," it said. "Not in there." My skin prickled. It knew my wife's name. Of course it did. The logbook line already knew my garage door. I backed away from the house door, breathing shallow. The garage felt suddenly smaller, the ceiling lower. The air smelled faintly like warm dust and something metallic underneath, like old batteries. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Relief hit hard. Finally, something normal. I pulled it out. No signal. Not even no service. Just a blank bar, like the phone had forgotten what a network was. The screen flickered once, then displayed a notification that made my stomach drop. Incident report required. I stared at it, pulse hammering.